My wife is a convert to the Catholic faith. She had a tough time with confession. She understood the theology. She couldn't get it through her head that when you go to confession, you got to confess your own sins, not your husband's. Bless me, Father, Ray has sinned. She made her first confession when she was 39. Now, gentlemen, you read these marriage books, they all tell you the same thing. Got to be on your knees for your wife. Okay. She goes in that confessional. I get on my knees, and I stay there the whole time she's in the confessional. So I took a week off from work. She came out. Honey, what do you think? Oh, you're right, Ray. I feel clean. Good. So, what'd you tell Father? I'm not telling you that. You can tell me you're not bound by the seal. I'm not telling you, Ray. I figured it out. You want to know what your spouse or your kid tells Father in the confessional? You kind of got to go in the back door. So, honey, what did you get for penance? Now, if you know what they got for penance, you can kind of reason backward to how rot-gut they were. I guess I could tell you that. I got a rosary. A rosary? It's not bad for 40 years of pagan muck. She said, with the stations of the cross at every bead. Oh, I kind of wish she'd have told me that before I married you. I still got to kiss you? Then she asked me, okay, Ray, what do you usually get for penance? Me? Most of the time? Half a sign of the cross. Sometimes a quarter. That's hardly enough time to levitate. Thank you for asking me to be here. What a privilege. What a treat. I was talking to some of the folks last night, a little get-together, just asking out of curiosity. So how many kids you got? 9. How many kids? 7. How many kids? 11. I did a little informal kind of statistical analysis. The average number of children among the people here is 6.94. You realize in our culture there are only 3 sins left. You can do anything you want in our culture, but there's 3 things you're not allowed to do. Smoke, spank, and have more than 1.74 children. Now, those of you moms who have gotten beyond the allowable 2, you can have 3 if you have 2 boys or 2 girls first. Oh, so you're still trying for your boy, huh? And then when you get to 3, if you've already had boys and girls, do you know how this is happening? Do you have a TV? Is your husband fixed? I didn't know he was broke. I'll give you a few things to come back with when somebody does this to you. You're out in public and you have them all traipsing behind you, and people come up, are these all your children? You just say this, no, the oldest is at home with the triplets. You got to watch everything you say in our culture. The only people you're allowed to pick on is women who are pregnant. You can pick on women who are pregnant and married. You're allowed to do this. Now, my children at one point were 12, 11, 10, 10, 9, 7, 4, 3, 2, and a baby. The remote broke. My 10 children are all blessings through adoption, all 10 of them. Now, some of you may be adopted parents. The agencies don't tell you this. I think it's a great benefit of adoption. If you adopt in December, you still get the tax deduction for the whole year. They pay for themselves that first year, then you start to fall behind because they eat more, but you cut back on the food, you can break even September, October, somewhere in there. My wife and I have had this ongoing conflict as we got more children. Ladies, personally, I believe you will agree with me. First of all, my wife does not work for a living. I don't know what she does. You quote me, I'll deny I was even here. I've seen what the woman does. I want no part of what the woman does. When the kids were little, she'd take them to a grocery store. I would go. If I was heavily sedated, I would go. Strung out behind her like ducks. You had to see it. Hands at their sides. Not allowed to touch anything. They would not deviate 6 inches either way out of a straight line the whole 3 hours they were in there. No, they wouldn't. Leg irons wouldn't let them. I got 3 white kids, 2 Hispanic kids, 2 biracial kids, 3 black kids. People would look at my wife. Some of them were pretty bold. Is some kind of club or something? Some of them wouldn't say a whole lot, but I could read their eyes. That major dork don't realize I'm ain't all his. I suspect her, but I can't catch her. Many of you have raised your children here. It is my opinion that you were the last generation across the board who knew who the parent was, who parented out of the mindset, I am mom, you are not. Part of the reason why the young parents get so much grief nowadays for having more than their allotted number of children is because parents have lost so much authority, so much confidence, so much willingness to stand against a culture hostile to their values and morals. And you hear this. How many do you have? They practically gag. 6. I can't handle the 2 I have. I don't even know how you do it. What has happened? Many things. Can't go through all of them tonight. What Sheila's paying me, you're lucky you're getting verbs. But I'm going to share with you a major cultural shift that has occurred and is part of the reason why so many of you who love children get abused. Me. The shrinks. I've altered everything. I'm everywhere. I'm all over women's magazines, all over television, radio, putting out thousands of books and articles every year. Net message, what do you know? You're just a mother. You can stumble your way along. Hopefully you won't foul it up too bad. But you want to do this right? The new, modern, psychologically enlightened way? Got to be state-certified, congressionally mandated child development ring, Psychomental International on Oprah. Specialist. Many of you have discovered that this discipline thing is much more difficult than anybody ever prepared you for. I've developed a technique that I guarantee you will discipline child, grandchild less. Foolproof. Simply do one thing. Lower your standards. You get them low enough, you don't have to discipline at all. I told you, quit doing drugs in the living room when I'm home. Discipline is an act of love for a lifetime. You can't establish morals and character without it. And part of the problem here is that now, when parents do, you folks are weird. You're weird. Look at you. Look how you love. Look what you accept as life. Look how you are so different from that culture out there. And by the way, every major cultural move has been brought about by a minority. Everyone. When we got our independence, do you think the majority of people wanted to be independent from Britain? They didn't. It was a minority. Changing the slave trade. It was a minority. You are a minority, but you're a powerful, vocal minority, and you got God on your side. So please, never underestimate your power, no matter what that culture thinks of you. Now, all that said, part of the problem here is with the young families, they're skittish, they're nervous. You leave him on the pot for 4 minutes too long, he's going to grow up to be a tattooed-faced motorcycle gang member on Springer. You named him John because you were hoping it would help in the toilet training. I was 3 years old when I said this to my mother. I don't like you. She looked at me. Raymond, you're a little behind. I stopped liking you last year. That was back before you could psychologically smack parents around, you know. One of my kids tells me I don't like you. So what? I got 5 or 6 who do. Any given moment, I got a 50% approval rating. There is an interesting phenomenon that occurs in my office. A parent will come in, describe a litany of trouble about this long. Then they'll say this: I think I'm giving you the wrong impression. Overall, he's a pretty good kid. How is that? Well, he's not on drugs or anything like that. One of the new moral high bars, he's not on drugs. I ask my clients, what would you like looking back at you at age 22? What would you hope to say about that child? No guarantees, but hope and prayer. If you're content to say, giving away kids are turning out nowadays, I'm counting my blessings. Parole officer says one of the nicest kids he has. I tell them, you parent just like most of those folks out there, dear people. You'll probably have a kid not on drugs. But if you wish to look at that child at 22 and say something like this: I'm not real objective, I am his mother, but I think he's 1 in 100. Morals, character, compassion, seeks God. That's a beautiful human being. And I challenge my clients, are you prepared to be 1 in 100 then, Gary? You can't parent like them anymore, Gary. You understand that? You supervise here, they supervise here. They think they're strict. You give out social freedom 2, 3, 4 years later than their peer group is getting it. And you won't be understood. You'll be critiqued and analyzed and second-guessed. And many of you have raised wonderful children. And you fought that culture every step of the way to do it. And in the end, you didn't get credit for it. You are so lucky. You just got good kids. You got Chastity and Angelica. I didn't get good kids. I got Chucky, Damien, Cujo, and Lucifer. Like it was the luck of the draw, I just got bad kids. Many of you are familiar faces to me, and it's so nice being here with you. And I want to apologize to you. Last night at the get-together, Sheila, a lot of wonderful conversation going on, and I kind of seem probably like a doofus. I can explain now. I'm a little preoccupied. My wife and I have been getting in these little tiffs, and every time we do, she brings up the same theme. Ray, would you please get out of the 70s? Ladies, one thing about us guys, and you know this, all you have to do is tell us to do something one time, we do it. I'm sensing incredulity here. I didn't want to hear this. Our anniversary was coming up. I was going to go out and get her a gift by myself. Not going to bring any of my daughters to help me. I got 5 boys and 5 estrogen Americans. I'm not going to bring any of my daughters to help me. My daughters know their mother up one side and down the other. My boys don't even know they got a mother half the time. The average 5-year-old girl walks up to her mother. Excuse me, mother. While I do appreciate the guidance you've given me on these first few years, I feel compelled to tell you you were wrong on most of it, okay? Why don't you raise Dad? He's got about 10 or 12 more years of middle school to go through. The average 16-year-old boy is still doing this. Mom, where's the ice cubes? No, I asked Dad. He don't know where they are either. My daughter Liz is 19. For the last 5 years, she's been able to run the whole family. My son Peter, 21, still giving his brother wedgies. These are not the same species here. I didn't want to hear this get out of the 70s stuff. I'm going to put a stop to it. So I went out by myself. I bought her one of those mood rings. See, that's kind of how she reacted, sort of like that. Okay, ladies, laugh. Those things work. They do. She's in a good mood, turns green. She's in a bad mood, leaves a red mark on my forehead. We can't know the effect of everything we do. I've heard it said that God, if He allowed us to see the effect of everything we do, we get real prideful real fast. But you've done something for me. You have given me my family. All 10 of my kids were in high-risk situations. Those birth moms, in various degrees, probably were pushed to get rid of those children. Something changed those birth moms' mind. Some other mindset came into those young birth moms' thinking that made them keep those babies. My kids have what they would be labeled as risk factors. Now, in psychological parlance, a risk factor is anything that would make a kid tougher to raise. Poor prenatal care, poor postnatal care, abuse in the womb, neglect in the womb, high maternal stress, low birth weights, heavy drug exposure, crack, narcotics, barbiturates, heroin, cocaine, nicotine, marijuana. My son Peter, birth mom was told, you're pregnant, don't worry about it. There's a blood clot growing next to the baby. Baby grows, blood clot grows. Blood clot wins, suffocates baby, problem solved. The problem made it. He was born 2 months in intensive care, but Petey made it. My daughter Elizabeth. Birth mom got pregnant when she was 13. Went to get it taken care of in Akron, Ohio. She didn't realize she was in her 7th month. Now, this is a pro-life group. This is as pro-life as I talk to. Many of the groups I talk to are not pro-life. At very best, they are amateur life. Now, I'm going too fast for that whole table right there. I watch their faces. They get angry at me. I've had notes left on my car because of this. That little girl was in her 7th month of pregnancy. Now, you know as well as I do, in the 7th month, they're bigger. You can't flush them out, suck them out. You got to pull them out. And when you pull them out, they come apart. They rip, crush skulls, rip off limbs. She panicked. She left there. She called us the next day. We were not expecting a 10th kid. We thought we were done at 9. I guess you could say Lizzie was an unplanned adoption. We weren't practicing safe phone. My son Samuel, 2 weeks before due date, 35-year-old birth mom was told something is terribly wrong. Do you mind if we test? Tentative diagnosis, corpus callosum agenesis. Worst case scenario, that's institution for life. That's a serious neurological birth defect. You got to figure everybody in that birth mom's world was against her having this child. Hey, personally, I'm opposed to this too. But this is an exception. This is why we do this kind of testing. This child's going to have no quality of life here. He's going to be in an institution. Do you know what those folks get paid? Do you think you can protect your son? Why don't we ask him if he wants to live in an institution, huh? You got to do the right thing. That dear woman did the right thing. She gave birth to Sammy. Sammy's 25. He is home from deployment in Germany. It's a shadow on the ultrasound. The test was totally inaccurate. So my kids have this confluence of developmental yuck that should make them harder to raise and slower to socialize, more impulsive, more immature, more herky-jerky, quirky oddities in their temperament. And I do have some like that. But I would not consider any of my 10 children strong-willed. This dude is one toke over the line, sweet Moses. How could you have 10 kids under those circumstances, not consider any of them strong-willed when, dear people, you know how everybody describes kids now? Mind of her own. Stubborn, streak a mile wide. So oppositional and defiant, contrary. Black is white, white is black. High maintenance, very high maintenance youngster. Challenging child, a very challenging child. We talked to the pediatrician. We have a difficult child. Difficult child is redundant. Remember sin nature? Am I delusional? I think there's a simple explanation. The strongest willed of my 10 children is not stronger-willed than his mother. We got so many strong-willed kids out there, dear people. The big people have lost will. Sometimes I will tease my clients, what would your mother have done had you talked to her the way your daughter is talking to you? No, you don't know my mom. I mean, I may have felt like it, but I didn't do it very often. Why not? I knew. You knew what? Something would happen. What? I don't know. Why don't you know? It never happened. Why didn't it happen? I never did it. Why not? Who's on first? I don't know. Third base? It's an Abbott and Costello routine. But you see what it speaks of, dear people? Many of you had that kind of quiet, confident authority that has to be there to raise the kind of kids you say you want to raise. Sticker systems are not going to get you there. Active listening and iMessages and win-win scenarios. That sense of morality. And that will set you apart from so many. Remember the look? Many of your parents had the look. Many of you had the look. You look at a kid now. He looks back at you. What are you looking at? You want a piece of this? My dad used to bounce the look off our heads at church, all the way down the pew. By the time it got to me, still had enough juice left in it that I wet myself. We get up, we go to communion. I'd come back, I'd stand at the edge of the pew like this, looking holy. And the Italian Catholic ladies, I could hear them thinking, now see, that is how a young man is supposed to behave. Look at him, look at him. He's letting his sisters go in first. It's going to be a priest. It's going to be a priest. Nope, skip all the way to cardinal. I'm just going to jump over and go straight to cardinal. That wasn't it. I didn't want to sit in urine the rest of Mass. The experts do not think like you. Do a little test. Go to the computer. Type in child, self-esteem, search. Last time I looked, 94 million options. The experts believe self-esteem is the preeminent moral virtue. Type in child, humility, search, a fraction. When's the last time you heard a secular expert talk about humility? That's at the very core of the virtues we want to teach. My humility is something I'm very proud of. Archbishop always wanted to go to confession like the politicians. Bless me, Father. Mistakes were made. And I would like to apologize if God took something I did out of context, misinterpreted it, and became offended. I'm sorry for his sensitivity. Can you imagine our Lord going up to the apostles? Simon, there for a while I had toyed with changing your name to Peter, but I decided against it. I didn't know what effect that would have on your self-esteem. I mean, you've always seen yourself as a Simon all your life. I go changing it to Peter alters your whole identity. But I'll tell you what, I've talked to my father, and he and I believe you have a future in this operation. If you can conceive it, you can believe it. If you can believe it, you can achieve it. 12 more weeks of Tony Robbins' management course, Simon, and I think you'll run this operation. In a way, watching that beautiful, beautiful presentation there, I was a little offended. I didn't see my name anywhere in there. So I nominated me 9 times, Sheila. In a way, Humana Vitae brought me back to the Catholic Church, and I'll tell you how it happened. I was in the Protestant world for 8 years. Many beautiful people there, many beautiful Christians. But the system, to me, was incoherent. It didn't make sense. It contradicted itself. And I wrestled with it. I struggled with it logically. Catholics have this belief that really irritates non-Catholics, and that is that our Lord himself will protect his church from teaching error in matter of faith and morals. Now, that really upsets a lot of people in the Protestant world. They don't like that. They just think, what is this? He's a man. How can you say this? Well, by the way, I was kind of a new atheist when I left the church. The old atheists kind of make logical sense. There is no God, therefore I can do what I want. I was kind of a new atheist. New atheists are everywhere now, even in our pews. There is a God, but he thinks a lot like me. So I was gone. I drifted out. And as I worked and clawed and scratched my way back by God's grace, I pondered the whole thing about contraception. Now, back in the 60s, of course, the enormous pressure, you all know this, the enormous pressure on the Catholic Church and the people around this is that we're sucking up the rainforest. There's going to be too many of us. We're using up all the minerals. And by the way, when you run up against somebody who thinks there's too many people on the earth, ask them one question. How are you so sure that you're not one of the too many? And of course, you all know the history, you all know the descent. It was like an atomic bomb was thrown down in the middle of our church, and the fallout just occurred for years and years and years after that. Now, at the time, they did not know exactly how the pill worked, medically speaking. They knew it prevented contraception, they knew it prevented fertilization, but they didn't really understand that it could act as an abortifacient. If Paul VI would have come out and said, because of the pressure, because of this commission that's put all kinds of pressure on me, and by the way, I had a lady pick me up from a talk once, and her relative was on that commission. And that commission got hijacked, by the way. You probably know that. It was not established to basically relook at that teaching. It was established to say, please help me to teach this teaching better to the faithful. And it expanded. It started out, I think, 19 or 23 people, and it was up close to 60 in the end. And she said her relative was so mad at Paul VI because he did not take their recommendation. So he did what good popes are supposed to do. I'm sure he prayed to the Holy Spirit for guidance. And when he came out with Humana Vitae, it was like, oh, this is why you don't let some celibate old man into our bedroom. And that's what was going on. If the Pope would have done what virtually all non-Catholic Christians have believed and said, well, we are pro-life. Life begins at conception. However, we're going to give you permission to take something that in an unknown percentage of cases can kill that life. Because obviously the pill prevents implantation if there is fertilization. He would have been in this moral incongruous position. Life begins at conception, but that's okay because you're allowed to take a chemical that'll do something to that life. For me, that was a classic example of God protecting his church. Brought me back to the church. I remember toward the end, when I was coming back, I was so confused, Archbishop. I didn't know what to think, what to believe. Christianity was all over the map. I was educated as an engineer, okay? So I couldn't say to people, we just have to agree to disagree. You know, you have your formulas for the bridge, and I have my formulas for the bridge, okay? No, you get the wrong formulas, the bridge falls down. And I couldn't think our Lord himself wouldn't come to teach truth. He would just more or less say, well, once I leave, you guys are going to scatter around for a while. I'll give you a book, and you'll all kind of try to interpret it, and it'll all just go all over the place. But just agree to disagree. I couldn't live like that. I was a mess. I was in the kitchen talking to my wife, and I was starting to get a little blubbery, and I don't cry easy. Last time I cried was when the Cleveland Browns called a draw play on 3rd and 12 in the playoffs. It's like, how could they do that? Now, gentlemen, I'm going to give you just a little tidbit here. If your wife is accusing you of not being sensitive enough or emotional enough, and you got to talk about some topic you know is going to be kind of emotive, secretly pull about 4 or 5 nose hairs It makes your eyes water. And you know, as you're talking, there's just a little rim of tears right here. And she's thinking, isn't he sweet? Look, this really matters. A culture says why. A culture says, please tell me why this human being acts this way. Now, part of fallen human nature, we don't look this way first for a why. We look this way. I do marriage counseling. Once every 5 or 6 years, I would like someone to come in my office and begin like this. You know why I'm here? Because it has finally occurred to me, I am extremely difficult to live with. I brought my spouse in because I want my spouse to describe me. Dr. Ray, you help me straighten up. Once every 5 or 6 years, maybe. So we don't look this way for why our kids are that way. We look at the kids. Let me just give you a couple of these before I go. The outward look. Diet. Cut out anything red. Cut out anything sweet. Cut out anything artificial. Cut out anything that remotely tastes good. Give them a dry cracked wheat, brown berry, tofutti sandwich on bean sprouts. This kid will get better math scores, kiss his sister on the lips before he paints murals on the church ceiling. Only one problem with diet. It doesn't have a whole lot of research support. Good for health and nutrition, but the idea that if I eat this, I'm going to act like this has a very weak link. But that notion has been swallowed whole by our culture. He went to that party last night. He had 3 Reese's peanut butter cups, 2 cans of Mountain Dew, and a Kit Kat. He came home and torched the dog. Now, I told those people, no Kit Kat. It was the Kit Kat. Probably not. Birth order, middle child syndrome. I tell parents, you're that afraid of middle child syndrome, don't have an odd number of kids. Have an odd number, have another one. Give one away. Wipe out that middle spot. Truth on birth order, it holds one place, oldest only. As a group, a little more independent, a little more achieving. Maybe they develop a shade quicker. I don't think that's their position. We all change our styles. First kid, you boiled everything she came within 50 feet of. Last kid, you throw them this big dirt ball, say, here, chew on that. Wipe your mouth off in the gas can before you come in the house. First kid, dual videotape of every burp and bowel movement he ever had. Last kid, 1 snapshot at the birth and 1 at the wedding rehearsal dinner. Hey, Dad, how come I got no pictures? It's not true, son. Your sister did a popsicle stick sketch of you in kindergarten. We kept it. Besides, you look like your sister. Use her pictures. First kid, you sneak into his room every night. You stick a mirror underneath his nostrils. Make sure he's still breathing. Last kid, you tell the dog, get out of the crib. Don't lick her in the face. No, I was talking to the baby. You don't know where that mouth's been. Poor dog. Somebody asked my wife when our 9th one, Peter, was about 2-3 months old, is Petey sleeping through the night yet? My wife says, I don't know if he is. We are. You know, you kind of get to that point. We have a lot of grandparents out here. You grandparents are treacherous people because you lurk, you lie in wait for us to have children as bad as we were to you. My mother, some years ago, was at our house in the kitchen at the island, not saying a word. My mother's Italian. Archbishop, you'll understand this. If she doesn't say something every 6 or 7 seconds, she is seriously depressed. Ma, what are you thinking? Ray, I'm thinking you and Randy are getting very sloppy in your parenting. Huh? Elizabeth gets away with murder. Now, Lizzie was the youngest at that time. She was about 7. The other kids tried any of this. You stop them dead in their tracks. Lizzie, you take a picture of it. You think it's so cute. You send out letters. Mom, Liz does not need much discipline. She's a very cooperative child. I'll give you an example. Last night I noticed It was about a half hour past her bedtime. It's about 3 a.m. All I had to say, Elizabeth, bedtime, please. She took out her cigarette. She put it right in the ashtray. And the other kids just flicked their butts on the floor. Not Lizzie, in the ashtray. I'm going to digress for a moment for the men here. Now, one of the things that's happened to us, guys, is the experts have truly undercut us in our roles as strong, loving males, as guys who protect that woman. More and more mothers and wives are telling me that they are the main authorities in their homes. They set the tone, they set the discipline, they set the standards, they take the kids to church, they do the disciplining, and Disney Dad over here, Mr. Good Time, Mr. Easy Going, laid back, oblivious, not notice nothing. Mr. Honey, I was that way when I was a kid. I think I turned out pretty good. And the women are thinking, let's gather the relatives and vote. More and more women are telling me that they are doing the lioness's share of the discipline and the authority in that home, and we guys are along for the ride. Do what your mother says. Do what your mother says. I do what your mother says. Everybody does what your mother says. Gentlemen, one way to show that woman love is to protect her. Next time you hear her locked into a battle with a kid, don't sit in the Barca lounger in the other room thinking to yourself, oh, I close my eyes. I can't tell which one of them's a 12-year-old. Get in there. That's not just your mom you're talking to that way. That's my wife. You go to your room. I'm going to find out what she wants me to do about this. Well, you can't protect right off the bat. I mean, you got to get something written. And then I'm going to do more. I tell you what, men, that woman feels protected. She will feel very affectionate toward you. Sometimes I give my boys a couple bucks. Go down and give your mother grief. I'll be right down. Worked pretty good till she found out I was only giving them a couple bucks. By the way, you know the definition of impending middle age? It's when your wife gives up intimacy for Lent and you don't realize it till Monday after Easter. These guys are looking at me like, what's your point, man? We know when Lent is, January 6th to August 28th. Archbishop, when are they going to shorten up that church calendar there? I'm going to say something that I pretty much have included in about every talk I do, and I particularly include it with groups like you. The fact that you're here says that you value life and family at the top 1%, okay? You're the 1%ers in that realm. And I know that the biggest disappointment, the biggest hurt, the biggest pain is for those of you whose children have left the faith. They have drifted into kind of a fuzzy sort of belief in anything. Maybe they're still Christian, but they're not Catholic anymore. Or maybe they're just downright atheists. Or they look at you like, Ma, that's your thing, okay? It's not mine. And the natural thing among so many of you who tried so hard to raise them to seek God is that you blame yourself. You scour the past. You wonder what you did wrong. How did you fall short? You know, you should have prayed the rosary in Aramaic. That's right. On your knees in broken glass. He lets them sit on the couch. That was the problem. He let them sit on the couch. I would like to logically prove to you tonight, please, if you're ever in that situation, you've had it happen to you, or you're nervous about it, that your days of beating yourself up over this are over. Please just answer yes or no. Is there a God? Is Christ God? Was he sinless? Could he perform miracles? Did he have a perfect understanding of human nature? Could he get most people to follow him? Oh, so you think you're better at this than the God-man. You can't perform a miracle. You can't even do a crummy card trick. Dear people, please, he asked you to do the very best you could in your humanness to raise them to love him. That culture is hideous. That culture is so much against people of morals and values and faith and love of God in so many ways. They have to navigate that, and it's a real course. Of my 10 children, I tell folks, I got some probably going to serve the church. I got some probably going to serve time. I got one going to Penn State, one probably going to State Penn. Don't ever underestimate your influence. I got my family because of you. You understand this? Something got inside those girls' heads to value this life when everybody in their world. I got a call. The most poignant call I ever got on the radio was a 22-year-old young lady. Her mother was raped, and she said there was not a single person in my mother's life who wanted her to let me live. And I cannot tell you how much I love my mother for doing this for me. So please, never underestimate your impact on a culture. Don't ever look at your numbers, because that's not where it's at. I want to close with a very touching marriage story. Many of you have long-standing marriages here, you know. Gary and Beth, you guys were talking last night, 34, 35 years. This kind of brings a tear to my eye, because I think this really is a commentary on really long-standing marriages. Elderly gentleman and his wife were shopping. She bends over, she picks up a can of clean peaches, she sticks it under her coat, she tries to walk out without paying. Woo! She goes before the judge. What'd you do? Stole a can of peaches? How many in a can? 12? 12 days in the county jail then. Her husband's shocked. He's like, oh, I have to speak up. Your Honor, please. Your Honor. What is it? She also stole a can of peas. Thank you for letting me be here with you.